For this library assignment, the comic book I am going over is called Mephisto Versus. It is written by Al Milgrom, and the art and cover is by John Borsomina, and the publisher is Marvel. The length is approximately about 110 pages long. The question asks if it's a graphic novel or a compilation. Technically, it's a collection of the first series of Mephisto that came out in the later part of the 1980s against the top teams during that time period, such as the Fantastic Four, the X-Factor, the X-Men, and of course, the Avengers. Where do the acts occur, and does it fit our model? Act 1 starts on page 5 and sets the story in motion and ends on page 27. While it is the end of the first issue, I think it's the end of the first act because it helps sets up the entire story and draws the reader into the comic to figure out what Mephisto honestly is up to. Act 2 starts on page 29 with a great splash page that gives the reader background information that happened on the last issue. It ends on page 76. I believe that's the end of Act 2 because it's much larger than the rest of the series, and it helps tie everything together. The final act starts on page 76 until the very end. Personally, I believe it fits into the model, and while I may have the acts wrong, I do think that they're pretty accurate given the nature of the book is only 4 issues instead of the usual 6 to 7 in a graphic novel compilation. Whose story is it? What is the goal? How does the conflict in Act 2 support that goal? My perspective is that it's a story of Mephisto trying to get one up on everyone. His specific goals is to trade off souls, and in this graphic novel of sorts, he's trying to get one soul that will be better than them all. Currently, it is Thor, and to do that, he has to basically do a trade-off. Eventually, it leads him to the mutant named Rogue, and once he has her under his command, she basically goes out and takes all the souls of the X-Men for him, and when she's teleported to the realm. However, it isn't until the end of that act that everything starts to come into place. And those are the last few pages of the story, which is pages 101 to 102. That's when it's revealed that true evil in itself is evil. That's the most greatest thing anybody can ever do. I also believe that this story was done to give, honestly, his own series. Mephisto deserves his own series. He deserves several of them. And it gives you a glimpse into his personality and what his motivations are. Especially due to the fact that Rogue can see to a person's mind, their feelings, their thoughts, and motivations, and we get to read those on the pages. Does the story have a solid story arc? Does it have a clear beginning, middle, end, resolution, satisfactory? It does have a clear setup, beginning, middle, and end. But I don't really think it would be that clear for readers who don't understand Mephisto very well. And it might come off as a little bit uneasy for readers because, well, for one, it's not a modern comic, and for two, there's a lot of things that are mentioned that are not in these issues that span several issues that a person just picking up the comic might not understand. However, I think the resolution is pretty interesting because Hela basically erases the memories of the Avengers, but everyone else, including the Fantastic Four, X-Force, X-Men, know what happened, except the Avengers' memories were erased because it basically showed Thor dying, and it would be easier that way after the final confrontation. However, I do enjoy the fact about this comic that it did introduce the larger Marvel Universe, such as the Living Tribunal, and who they basically gave an issue to Mephisto that every action will have a consequence. Do these characters have a solid character arc? Well, personally, I believe that both Rogue and Mephisto have character arcs. Rogue went from basically being, I'm not sure what to do, to actually taking it upon herself to take the powers and abilities of the X-Men. Now, while this was under Mephisto's control, she did not know that at the time. Mephisto's character arc goes from borrowing, well, not really borrowing, but trading off the souls of different people. From Invisible Woman to Jean Grey to basically everyone he can get his hands on. Eventually, he gets to Rogue, where he takes Rogue and basically trades her soul for Thor's for a period of time where he encases him in Mystic Mylar. Once that is done, he sends Rogue back to the X-Men, and then he has to fight Hela and Thor and the X-Men on 2 different fronts. Basically, Hela teleports Thor to another realm. Mephisto has to track them down, while also beating the X-Men into a bloody pulp, which he does easily. Well, not necessarily X-Men, but Avengers, but they can get confusing at times. Finally, in the end, he admits he cannot beat Thor and Hela together. And he also admits that he will meet Hela again when they basically do a ceasefire. In the end, the Tribunal admits that Mephisto mocks what is, what isn't, and basically gives him a warning. And then he admits that evil, of course, is some reward. Does the story establish and have effective transitions? Do the readers know when and where they are? Honestly, I'm not quite sure. There is a bunch of text to work through. I mean, about as much as a chapter book. And it can be brutal to get through. You have to read it slowly. And since this is a lot more dialogue, you have to be pretty careful of how you're reading it and take your time. It's not to say it's a bad thing, but if you read too fast, like sometimes I do, you cannot read the panels properly. Discuss McCloud's ideas of transition as it relates to my chosen work. Well, in Mephisto Versus, there's a lot of transitions, but some of them you have to fill in by yourself, some of them you just assume. You have to actually relax and let yourself get comfortable with pacing. That being said, there were instances in this comic where I wasn't too sure what happened, but I had to read in and basically fill in all the gaps by assumption and what I know about the characters and Mephisto himself. Does the story make use of the page as a mini comic idea? I'm not exactly sure. There are loads of text in the comic and not very much movement. So I don't think it would work in this instance because there's just a butt ton of text. And sometimes the story moves a little bit too slowly. Does the story make effective use of directional flow? Does the movement of art combine with layout and text on a full page to pull the reader through? I think, given the amount of text on the page, yes it does. But because of that, the text bubbles take up most of the panels and it's difficult to focus on. The movement of the art combined with the text is decent, but honestly, you could Thanos snap the dialogue by cutting it in half. You'd still get the same exact story. Overall, I don't think a modern reader would like the layout, and I don't think that they'd be able to understand it without having to take some time to actually read through it carefully. Do you recommend this to your classmates? Why or why not? The comics I read vary, from Marvel to DC, Dark Horse, independent publishers, and I don't recommend comics to anybody, honestly, except for 1 or 2 people. For this one, I would not recommend it because I don't think many people, including my classmates, would be interested in it. Mostly it's because of the amount of dialogue, and I don't think they're going to sit down and read it, honestly. I wouldn't want to. Probably you would not want to. Would you recommend this to your friends? Why or why not? I honestly would, because I like to write Mephisto, and I really like the character. I've liked him for as long as I can remember. And this is a real good opportunity to learn about his interactions with other characters and tell you what exactly he's capable of if you've only seen him in a movie or only heard vague mentions of him before. And I do believe he's one of the most powerful villains in the main Marvel continuity. Any other observations that we've had in class? I've noticed that comics are pretty interesting. I've had a look at them the last few weeks, and sometimes you have to compromise to make things work properly, especially in flow and understanding placement of different things. And our fun fact, Mephisto is honestly the best and favorite Marvel character in my mind. Well, besides Mysterio, Blackheart, Venom, Carnage, and basically everyone else that I can think of. Spider-Man is okay, but not very much. I mean, because I love villains. I love them to death. In this comic, Meph decided to take things a step further and essentially win by losing. He put his entire realm on the line and came out on top. He literally sacrificed everything when his realm was burning, and he could have basically died, but he did not, thankfully. That would have been really bad along the way, considering his interest in all the Marvel Universe and changing its signs for the better or the worst. And the universe itself, the main continuity, would not be the same without him. Especially because he was responsible for the One More Day deal that took away Peter Parker and Mary Jane's marriage. And I think that is it. Thank you very much.